One of the questions that often comes up is, what are the job prospects during an OPT period? We can analyze this question from a data-driven perspective and also through just the holistic nature of the experiences you will have. From a data-centered standpoint, the U.S. government publishes data around OPT students. The last publication of this data was in 2017. There were roughly around 325,000 students who were on their OPT during that period. And roughly 275,000 students of those were able to find employment. So what that means is you have a high degree of probability that you will end up with an opportunity. Now, there are a few things you can do to help tilt the scales in your favor, because when you're on your OPT, you only have 90 days to ensure that you get that employment. If you're unable to procure an employment in that 90-day period, then your OPT gets lapsed. During that OPT period, you can find employment at a variety of different places. It doesn't have to be paid employment. It could be unpaid employment, because the notion around OPT is so that you can apply the knowledge you've gained. It's the practicality in real world of the theoretical knowledge you've learned. That's the focus. So the employment can be unpaid, and you'll have a variety of sources to get that. You could also potentially do research during your period of OPT with a professor, and that's also allowed. It may be paid, it may be unpaid, but that's still acceptable. Now, the largest category is really around this paid employment prospects. If you're doing a STEM OPT, if you have a STEM designated degree, then you're doing the OPT for 12 months and you have a 24-month extension. If it's the regular OPT that comes with a non-STEM designated degree, then you only have 12 months to work in the U.S. But during that time frame, when we look at the data, generally the data is quite positive that you will be able to find employment. Here, what you see on the screen is a list of employers that has hired students on their OPT period. Notice you can find a whole host of companies here that's very much in the Fortune 500, the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks. They're all hiring students in their OPT. There's also a handful of consulting firms based out of India that hire students for their OPT. The problem with these firms is they don't generally hire these students on an OPT and then get them to an H-1B visa. So like that bridge may be missing. It's not a bad thing. You'll still have a great experience working for these companies and amass that experience, but just know like that's a challenge. And also the US government and the immigration policies have really shifted away from companies who are doing this consulting, where you will be hired on as a consultant and then you'll be transplanted into a client site. And so the immigration policies shy upon companies who do that. They really want to enforce and allow for the experiential learning that you get by working with the firm that's sponsoring this OPT. Now, there's one more aspect that I do want to clarify. You can further tilt the scales in your favor by making sure that you've had a couple of rounds of internship. In your bachelor's program, you will have roughly 4 summers. So imagine, if you would, that you have had 3 to 4 internships during that 4-year period. Well, guess what? The chance of you getting an OPT is now astronomically high, because you've either had 3 different internships at 3 different companies, or perhaps 3 different internships at the same company. But regardless, you've had an exemplary work experience during a time here in the US. So when it comes to applying for a job with your OPT, your chances are high. There is a caveat that I do also want to clarify and outline. When you do apply for a job, even though you have an employment authorization and you can work here in the US without a need for a company to truly sponsor that employment, employers will ask, do you need sponsorship down the line? What they're asking for is, will down the line be problematic? Would they need to sponsor your H-1B? And the short answer for that is yes, down the line you will need sponsorship, even though you don't need it now. But even though down the line you do need it, employers will choose to disqualify those applicants. And so that's the downside of finding employment, because not everyone will choose to employ an OPT candidate. But most of these big firms do. And so in terms of that tilting the scale that I mentioned earlier, if the big firms do, then ensure that you get those internships, because that's what these big firms will value. Hi, my name is Patrick Carriel. For more questions like this, or to discuss your particular case, come find me on AmericanColleges.com. I'm originally from India. I came here to do my bachelor's degree at Arizona State University and my master's degree at MIT. I was also the former vice president at the U.S. News Global Education, which is part of usnews.com, the premier source of U.S. university rankings. And in all those years, I've worked with over a dozen U.S. universities on their admissions side, and also counseled thousands of students from India and around the world on their educational pursuits. Whether you have a question about what subject area to focus on, which universities to apply to, what kind of scholarships or job opportunities you might have on campus, what are your opportunities like going to be in OPT period, or perhaps during your H-1B visa sponsorship period, I'm here to help if you need it.